Leadership isn't just a title, it's a revolution. Hi, I'm Nkoyo F. Young Lewis, your guide through the real, raw, and relentless challenges of leading change in a world that often resists it. If you're a bold, audacious leader, tired of the status quo, and ready to make a real impact, this podcast is for you. Welcome to the Leadership Revolt, where we disrupt outdated norms, reimagine what's possible, and lead with courage, clarity, and conviction. She had the vision, the charisma, the passion, but no systems to support the weight of her idea. So it faltered. Meet Maya, the dynamic founder of Bright Futures Initiative, who had a bold vision to revolutionize STEM education for underprivileged youth. When a tech company handed her a $1.5 million grant to scale nationally, it felt like her moment to shine. She launched big programs in 5 cities almost overnight, inspiring communities and donors alike. But behind the scenes, cracks began to form. Compliance deadlines missed. The board, made up of her friends, didn't have the expertise to provide oversight, and she partnered with an organization who ended up in the news. 9 months later, the tech company froze the grant after finding financial discrepancies, forcing her to shut down programs and lay off staff. Her bold vision faltered, not because it wasn't brilliant, but because it lacked the structure to sustain it. And I'm going to tell you that this story is all too common, and that if you have a bold idea, more than the passion to bring it to life, you absolutely need systems and governance and compliance to truly thrive. And so today we're going to dive into how leaders like you, can avoid Maya's pitfalls and turn your big ideas into lasting impact built on the right foundation. Welcome back to the Leadership Revolt, where we are disrupting outdated norms, reimagining what's possible, and leading with courage, clarity, and conviction. And beyond leading with those very key components to the work that we do, I'm on a mission to make sure that you are sustaining and safeguarding your biggest, boldest ideas, your most audacious vision, in a way that you have the comfort, the confidence, and the commitment to actually execute it, because you know that you're making decisions based on a framework and a structure that is beneficial and organized and secure. So today we're going to dive into how leaders can avoid the pitfalls that Maya, this hypothetical nonprofit leader, experienced. But I want to tell you that it's not just a hypo, right? I have spent nearly a decade representing nonprofit organizations, both pro bono and as full-on clients when I ran my law practice. And one of the reasons why I stepped out of practicing law and stepped really into the compliance and governance space was to make sure that I can help more organizations actually bring together what the regulatory requirements are, plus the operational everyday realities are of leading change. And this often happens for us, particularly here in the United States, through nonprofit organizations. But you could be a benefit corporation. You could be a for-profit LLC doing this work and trying to figure out how to create impact while running a profitable, successful organization. And I want to name and elevate and lift that up because, again, when I was practicing, I set up for-profit, nonprofit, social impact businesses. And the goal was always for us to be disruptive and doing things to actually make sure that the lives that we were living were honoring of all of the people, that they expanded access and inclusivity and hope. And it's so wild that we live in a world where all of those words are now dangerous, radical phrases. But I'm leaning into it because, one, I want to be on the right side of history. I hope that you are committed to doing so as well. And two, we need it. I think if this past election has shown us anything, is that we have a lot of suffering, a lot of pain, a lot of hurt that is happening. And the solutions that people are choosing for that are different. But of those of you who lean on the side of being a humanist, invoking and living in a world that is fueled by integrity and inclusivity. I want to be here to support you along the way. And the Leadership Revolt is absolutely here to do that. It is foundational, I think, in our work. A lot of the work that I do with private clients is related to governance and compliance and using those as strategies, tools for disruption and innovation. But the foundation of all of that is having the right mindset. And so that is why I spend time here in the Leadership Revolt talking with you about these big ideas and how we can adapt and adjust and make sure that we are designing the world that we need and desperately need to make sure that things go the way that we want them to. So I always want to encourage, I have to be reminded to invite you to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. We exist here because of viewers. Our ability to expand our impact and have deeper, fuller conversations with more leaders like you is absolutely tied to our subscribers and our ratings. And so I am asking and inviting you to rate and subscribe if you have not already. Share this podcast with another bold leader who's out there leading change as well. What else I want to say, just as a matter of housekeeping before we really dive in? I don't know. It'll come back to me if it's important. Let me just make sure you know where we're going, right? Today, we're going to talk about the importance of compliance and governance in sustaining bold ideas. I know compliance doesn't sound sexy. It's not as fun or exciting as fundraising, but compliance is actually the foundation to absolutely everything that you are doing, whether it's for-profit or nonprofit work. There are rules, there are laws, there are regulations, there are things that you got to do that you have to do. Otherwise, you can get yourself in really big, costly issues and problems. So I want to make sure that we're giving compliance the power and weight that it really has. And thinking about governance too. If you are running an organization, for-profit, nonprofit, if you are a corporation, I like to remind people that a nonprofit is in fact a corporation. It is a nonprofit corporation under the same umbrella as the for-profit corporations, as the benefit corporation. All are corporations which require a level of governance, including having people on your board who know what their responsibilities are to your organization and can actually effectively provide the oversight and leadership that's necessary there. And I think those are two areas that I often see a lot of great change makers, do-gooders, passionate people fall short of having the impact that they're capable of, is they either don't have a metric to maintain all of their compliance, and so silly, simple mistakes get missed that cause huge, huge problems. For example, not filing your 990s 3 consecutive years. It's an auto revocation, and you got to go through a whole process to get that status back, right? Or you have improper governance. So your board is not helpful to you in terms of providing strategic insight, opening up their Rolodex to networks and people who can help you to do the work. Sometimes getting in the way because they don't actually understand what their responsibilities are. And these are why these things are important for us to talk about, and why I think this example of Maya, who's great, wonderful idea, passionate, driven, creative, brilliant in all these different ways, isn't able to see the full weight of her impacts and her bold idea because she didn't have the foundation that was necessary. We're also going to talk about how strong systems empower leaders to take calculated risk. Let me be clear. In 2025 and moving forward, it's about to be a wild ride here, right? The votes happened. They showed up the way that they did. And so what is going to happen under a Trump administration, what will happen with Project 2025 and the way, the implications and the things that it has, the impact that it can have on the social impact sector, the way in which it can be chilling in some ways, is going to require all of us to take calculated risks. And so I want to talk with you about why having a strong system can actually empower you to do that and not actually chill your behavior and cause you to do less or be more quiet, less bold in this season, because what we really, really absolutely need are people to go bigger and bolder to make sure that we're getting to the outcomes we need. Last thing is, of course, I'm going to give you a cheat code on how to bridge the gap between vision and structure, because I'm all about practicality. So stay all the way to the end to learn how you can turn these tips and tools that I'm going to share with you right now into a coherent structure support system for yourself. We'll get into that in the towards the end. But before we do, I want to remind you, mindset is the foundation. And I really want, if nothing else, to get you to start thinking differently about the work that you do. You do not run a little organization, right? This isn't like a little something that you do in the spare time to do good for others. This is disruptive, powerful work that is liberatory, that is going to free a lot of people. And because of that, it's dangerous. It's radical. It's revolutionary. And I know a lot of times those words have connotations that make us all scared and want to step back, because sociology would say we all typically want to be included. We want to be involved. But the reality is the gap between the haves and the have-nots is growing exponentially. And the only way for us to get to a solid society that is not in danger of imploding upon itself is to close those gaps. And so the work that you're doing is powerful. It is important. It is impactful. It is necessary. It is scary. And I want to be a support to you as you're going through that. So let's get into this. My first key point that I want to make sure you know and understand and lean into and accept is that vision without structure fails. It is not enough to have a really bold vision, to have a really great mission statement that's set out there, to just jot down what your key values are, and to blast that all over the place without a structure. You have to turn vision, turn ideas into impact. And the bridge between your vision and the reality is a system. It is a pathway. It is a structure. It is something that allows you to operationalize that vision. And we have to be okay with creating systems and structure and not just leaning on the, we'll figure it out. We're creatives. I'm here just for the change and the impact. Like, the only way for us to have long enduring impact is to have a structure and a system that safeguards the work. One of the things that I think from this past election that sits with me is how much of the laws, how much of the policy changes that were attempted were not embedded in the Constitution or any more enduring, stabilizing structure. We have court cases that were overruled. We know there are going to be executive orders that are just going to be thrown off, or things that are just going to no longer be enforced. And so as social impact leaders, as nonprofit leaders, as people who are committed to change and creating impact, we have to make sure that we're safeguarding that, and that there is a way for there to be a legacy and a playbook that others can gather to carry the mantle forward. We also see this when organizations have turnover. Chief leader leaves, the most stable, enduring board member leaves, and things just fall apart because it wasn't institutionalized. It was held with one person. And if we go back to the story with Maya, where she has this really great idea and she gets out and she gets money, she puts it out there, but there's no structure to make sure that she's managing the compliance aspects. Her board are all her homegirls, and we love y'all, but if you don't have the skills and the fortitude to provide that oversight, things can fall apart. You can end up getting into partnerships with individuals who are not as ethically or or lack the level of integrity that you need. And the last thing that anybody's organization needs is to be on the news for some sort of scandal, particularly if you're a nonprofit organization, because one of the most important things you have is the goodwill that you have built up, the trust that you have built up, that people, when they give you the resources, you're going to make good on them. And so we want to be very intentional about creating the structure. And that structure has absolutely two legs that got to be in place. And that is compliance, because again, there's a law that touches everything. There's nothing that we do in the United States that does not have some sort of law or regulation or policy or something tied to it. So we want to make sure that we have a structure in place to manage compliance. What are the deadlines? What are the things that have to happen? We're getting a big grant. What are the requirements inside that grant? A lot of times your grant is a contract, and there are terms around what you can or can't do with it. There's requirements around reporting. And that's why I say, everybody's not ready to go get big grants, because if you don't have the infrastructure to make sure that you can maintain the grant requirements, you might find yourself in a situation where you have to return money to an organization because you haven't done what you needed to do with it. And that never looks good, never feels good, and can be really emotionally taxing as well. The other reason why your vision needs a structure is because there is an emotional toll on leaders when your ideas falter. So I am someone who has had a lot of really bold, incredible ideas, and I've jumped out there and just tried to make a million things happen at the same time as one person with no structure, no system around how these things happen. Just, we're going to launch it today and hope that it works. A lot of times I have been very disappointed with the results, because I put all this effort and energy into getting something off the ground, and there's nothing to hold it up. There's nothing to sustain it. And so to avoid that emotional toll that becomes a cycle that starts to then tell you, oh, you're not good at this. Oh, maybe you don't know what you're doing. Maybe you should be doing this. To avoid creating doubt where doubt doesn't need to be, because it's not the idea, it's the actual structure or system around it. We want to make sure that your bold ideas are safeguarded by a system that supports it. My father wanted to be an architect, which is really fascinating. He's very creative, but also, like me, very practical, reasonable, etc. And so when I think about architecture, my husband and I were looking at doing a renovation. We've talked to an architect. It's great. You can have all of the most wonderful ideas, but if you are building something on shaky ground, it is only a matter of time before it falls. Without structure, even the most innovative vision, the most thorough, well thought out idea and plan becomes a house of cards. You have to build on a solid foundation. We have to build the infrastructure for our ideas so that we can actually see them take flight. We can weather the storm that's going to happen. You know me, I love to read. So creative change will say, if we're trying to do something innovative and different and new, people are going to push back. They're going to need a lot of time to get ready, to be comfortable with doing it. And so we need to have an infrastructure that allows us to weather through that time so we don't quit too soon. One of the things, I'd be reading, and so one of the books that I have read that I recommend to people, Atomic Habits, James Clear, I think I've shared on other podcasts. I had an opportunity to hear him speak live. And one of the things that he says, and I'm going to have you transfer goals for vision, because they can be very similar in ways, is that goals are for people who care about winning once. Systems are for people who care about winning repeatedly. I want you to win repeatedly. I want you to have impact repeatedly, not just one time that's fleeting. We can't figure out how we did it or how we recreate it or how we sustain it. I want you to have impact that is enduring, that precedes you, that continues after you have moved on to your next most important work. I want your impact to be enduring, something that people can continue to build from. And so we have to build systems. We have to start thinking about the social good that we're trying to create the way that franchise businesses think about themselves. They have systems. When people buy a franchise, they're essentially buying a business in a box. There are clear systems, there are manuals, there are SOPs, standard operating procedures around how things are done. And in essence, you should be able to grab the playbook, run it play by play, and get the same results. And we want to be able to create that for ourselves as progressives, as change makers, and not just be rooted in doing good, but actually making sure that there is a process, a replicable way that others can continue to do good and can join us in the work of doing good. Let me be real honest. Some of y'all are having problems getting people on your board or people to volunteer because it looks like chaos over there. It's not clear what the systems are. You can't really articulate what you need people to do. You can't really tell them, if you're coming on the board, exactly what the role is. It's just, no, honey, you don't need someone who's there for 1 hour a month. You actually need some real support, some thought leaders, some connectors, and those types of things. But without having a clear system, your vision is just floating out there as something wonderful and beautiful that is going to have a really hard time getting done. Let me know if I ripped out some edges, if I hit you and taught you to think about something around systems and compliance and governance as two really important pieces of that. You got to follow or figure out what the rules are so that if you're going to break rules, you know what they are, what the consequences are. You can take a calculated risk about that. And you need to have the oversight to your business, the people who can help you to really think about what the next steps are, what risks you're taking, open doors for you. And that is a leadership role that's really important to not only cultivate for yourself as whether you're the CEO, board member, thought leader, owner of the business. You got to make sure that you're continuously leveling yourself up because leadership is an inside job first, and you'll never go beyond what you have not mastered in yourself. So let me know in the comments, talk to me. Does that resonate? What does that have you thinking about your next steps and things that you need to do in your organization today to make sure that you don't end up like Maya with all the things that you needed, the money, the opportunity, and all of it cut, and you got to lay off people. You have to turn back around because foundational things are not in place. And if you're listening to this and you're thinking to yourself, I have not really prioritized creating the systems and the infrastructure in my social impact organization that's necessary, and I really need to start getting it together, especially as we are preparing to enter into the uncertainty that will be this next administration and the possible negative impacts that might come out, then I encourage you to join the waitlist for our soon-to-be launching monthly subscription focused on compliance and governance support for bold, audacious nonprofit leaders who are leading change, advancing goals, and advocating for women and children and the work that they do. And so that is our Impact Guard. And I am super thrilled to be releasing this because it is something I have been building for a while. When I left my practice, I had a monthly legal subscription for nonprofit organizations and social impact, some that were for-profit benefit corporations specifically. And I'm really excited to bring some of all of the sort of compliance and legal understanding and knowledge and information along with my organizational development chops, leadership development chops to really make sure that you are safeguarding your impact. And so I will put the link in the show notes. I encourage you to take a look if you are serious about making sure that you have a clear plan for how you manage both compliance and governance and the shifting nature of just the way the world is today. And if you check that out and you're like, oh, I'm not ready for that level of investment, I also encourage you to always get connected with us inside the collective. That is our monthly membership for social impact leaders leading change. It is a place where we have content and community. There's always a monthly theme with some tools and resources that are available there, Q&A, and just opportunity to grow along other like-minded leaders. So get in community. There is no reason why any of us are going to be moving and doing this alone, especially with a lot of the challenges that we have ahead of us in terms of the type of work that we're doing. Thanks for joining me on this episode of the Leadership Revolt. Remember, leadership isn't about following the rules. It's about rewriting the rules with audacity, purpose, and integrity. If this episode sparks something for you, share it with another bold leader ready to disrupt the status quo. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review so we can keep building this movement together. Until next time, stay bold, stay curious, and go lead audaciously.